Hello and welcome to the instructional handover video for the 2020 Benimar Mileo 282. So we'll walk around the outside controls and talk about the bits you need to know, and then we'll work onto the inside. So first things first, we have here the fuel filler. So you will need the engine key for that. Key straight into there, and that's where you fill your fuel. Underneath that we have the AdBlue filler. So on the dashboard that comes up when that is going to require filling, so it gives you a bit of a countdown to tell you when that's needed to be filled. Here we have the blinds that are drawn across to black out the side windows. So they draw across like that. Just make sure this goes straight as you're drawing it across to stop these crumpling up. And then they fix back into position by these two little lugs here. So just make sure, so to release it, you pinch these little things together. Just make sure that that's in position correctly, because otherwise when you're cornering, these can shoot across and impede your vision. And it's exactly the same on the windscreen. So you just pinch those together, draw that across. There's a piece you can see there that goes around the rear view mirror pillar mounting point, and then there's a magnetic strip on the side of these that draw together, and that's how they you black out the windscreen. So again, just make sure that they go back straight and are pinched. The pinch points there are clipped back into position correctly. To open the bonnet, it's this catch here. So you just pull that down, that's released now. There is tyre pressure information here. However, the tyres themselves are the best referred to on the tyres, because most motorhomes have specialist camping tyres with reinforced sidewalls that are capable of being a higher pressure, so refer to the tyres themselves. This model has been fitted with heated seats, and that's the heated seat switch there. So I'll just show you underneath the bonnet some basic stuff under there. So underneath here we've got washer fill, we have coolant, brake fluid, engine oil, dipstick. So yeah, we've got coolant, brake fluid, engine oil, dipstick. If you ever need to jump start this vehicle, your positive cable goes onto there, so you red onto there, and then it earths onto here. So your black cable onto that, red onto that one there. So moving on around the vehicle then, main habitation door, we'll go through that in a second when we go in the van. This has got an external shower point, and the head for that is just here. Obviously take the cap off the end, that just goes into there, and it's a bayonet fitting, so once you push that in, that collar slips back towards you, and then you push the collar back to release it. It's also got an external gas socket. Again, it's a bayonet fitting, so you can either use this flexible hose which comes with it here, and that's the bayonet fitting on the end, or you could attach your own hose onto the end of this, which just slides into there like so. Okay, so that's in position, and again the bayonet fitting, you just push that collar up, this collar here, and that releases the fitment off the end. In here there's some European adapters for filling the gas, but I'll come to that in a second. But in this green bag they're the adapters for filling the gas bottles, which are on the other side of the motorhome. So they're the external points. Next to that we've got vents for the fridge. The way the fridge cools is that it draws cool air in at the bottom and expels warm air at the top, so just make sure that those vents are kept clear. You can buy winter covers for those to stop unwanted breezes coming through those vents, but they are required to vent the fridge. So working on around the motorhome then, we've got access to the garage via this locker. This customer has asked us to refit the tow ball, and we will do that. We were just waiting for some bolts to do so, but the tow ball is there. We have the toolkit, spare wheel. There's a winder there for the corner steadies, so this winder here locates onto the end of these corner steadies here, which are mounted just there. So what that does, if you're motorhoming on a pitch in high winds, it'll stop the van from wobbling. They're not designed to steady level it. It won't level it. You need to. They're there just to keep it steady. The awning on the side here, the winder goes into that eye there. There's a hook that goes into that eye. The carpets are coiled up in there, and I think that's everything for that garage. Working on around then, we have the gas bottles. So there's 2 refillable gas low bottles fitted to this motorhome. And there's a level indicator on the bottles themselves, and you switch the gas on by turning this dial here as indicated on the end of it. So clockwise is to close it, and then anti-clockwise to open the gas bottles, and that's the same on the other one there. Again, an indicator to tell you how full it is. This valve here will differentiate from one bottle to the other, so you can select your bottle. If you put it in the middle, then it'll draw gas from both. That's the pressure regulator, so there's no need for a separate pressure regulator. That's already in line. You need to probably, with this model, there isn't a crash valve on it, so you need to switch the gas off when you're traveling. The gas is filled via this filler here. That's the UK default fitting, and then those little fittings that I showed you in the green bag there if you travel to European countries. So working on around the motorhome again, then we have the toilet cassette, which is emptied via this hatch here. So to empty that, you lift up this tab here, pull out the cassette toilet, which then would be full of toilet waste. You slide this back here, open up this, sorry, let me start again. So to empty it, you take that nozzle off like that, pour away the waste, and as you're doing so, press this blue button in, and that lets air in as the liquid is pouring out. To put the chemical into this, you slide this back, open that up, pour the chemical into here, which breaks down all the solids and gets rid of all the smells. And then to replace the cassette back in, close that back up, slide that on, and the cassette goes back into its housing. So the water is filled, so the water tank is filled. So the water tank is filled via this cap here, so there is a key that's required to open that up. So put the key in, turn it, and then open up the cap. In terms of draining down, this tank will need draining. If whenever you're not using the vehicle or in cold conditions, it's very important that you drain all the water out of the motorhome, including this tank here. So that's done via this nozzle that's underneath here. Now we are waiting for a part to arrive, which is a handle that just goes onto that little nozzle there. Now temporarily, if you just use a pair of mole grips like I have and turn it, that will allow that ball joint to open just there and let the water drain out of the freshwater tank. So that's the fresh water dealt with. The wastewater is drained via this pull lever here. So when you pull that towards you, that's open, and when you push it towards the van, that's closed, and the wastewater comes out of this tap here. Just one more thing. This is the exhaust for the boiler. So whenever you're using the boiler on gas, then you will see exhaust coming from that. That needs to be kept clean. Just next to that, next to the water tank, is the mains inlet. So that's where the mains cable would go to give you mains supply to the motorhome. Okay, we're in the motorhome now, so I'll work from the front towards the back. This motorhome's got swivel seats. To swivel those, it's that lever there. You pull that, and that allows you to turn the seats around. They won't lock when they're rear facing position, but when they're forward facing, you can see that's locked into its position. This is the main entrance door here. So right across from that, we've got the dinette, and that is where the freshwater tank is housed. That's the one that we talked about with the drain on the outside, just missing the handle, but you can use a pair of pliers to open that up. So that's just pointing out where the freshwater tank is housed, and the pump is on top of that. So the water tank itself, you can actually gain access to it by opening this up here, should you wish to clean it out or see into the tank for any reason. The pump itself, should it need replacing or the filter replacing, then that's where the pump is housed, but shouldn't really need to do that. That's probably more for a technician to do. But I'm just pointing out where the pump itself is in an emergency. So this is the forward facing dinette, and I've simply taken the cushion off. And I'll replace that now. So in front of the dinette there, we have a leaf table. So if you slide the leaf over like that, and then this is like a hinged lid. You can probably see there. That's how the table extends. And then underneath the table itself, there's a little lever there that holds the table in position and to stop it from moving around in transit. This forward facing dinette does have seat belts. They're just tucked behind the cushion here, and then the receptacle for the seat belts is just underneath. The valeters haven't been in this motorhome yet, so they'll no doubt remove the cushions anyway, but that's where the seat belts are. The middle section there, that folds down to allow the passengers' legs to sit comfortably when in transit. So moving on towards the back then, we have a bank of light switches just there, so that'll allow you to switch the lights on as you enter the vehicle. The main control panel is just here. So we have, so basically this will switch everything on and off. You won't get the lights, the pump, etc. working without that. And then that secondary switch there, really you need them both switched on. The charger won't work without that blue light switched on. So, but to get it operational, essentially, you want both of those lights illuminated. The one next to that is the water pump, so that's responsible for pumping the water from the tank, which we've already discussed, through the pipework and then eventually out of your taps. When you first fill up with water, what you'll need to do is purge the system of air. So fill up the water tank as we've shown, open up the taps onto hot. That will then fill up the boiler and all the associated pipe work, and then wait until you get a pure flow of water coming out of your tap. Then you know all the air is out of the system and you've just got water in your system as opposed to air. And then do exactly the same on the cold side as well. Once that's done, you can switch your taps off. You can leave the pump running after you've filled the pipework full of water. So when the pump's running, you'll see that illuminated there. So obviously that's got to be switched on before you start purging it, purging the system of air. The one next to that is the external light, so that lights up your awning light effectively outside. This is your leisure battery, so that indicates what condition your leisure battery is in. At the moment we're plugged in as indicated via this little LED here that shows a symbol of a plug, so that's showing that we're plugged in and charging. The button next to that is it shows like a truck, so that is your engine battery, so that's indicating your engine battery condition. One next to that shows a picture of a tank. That is the fresh water situation, so it is reading a little bit. I don't think there's much in this, but it's showing a quarter there. And then this will allow you to adjust the brightness of the display. So if, for example, you've got these lights on here and someone's sleeping in the bed which is directly above us, then you can adjust the brightness of the display. Okay, so working on around the motorhome then. Some of the things probably don't need explaining, like the hob. It's like a domestic hob. Turn these around, your ignition is there. Keep the button pressed in. On the electric heater, just make sure that that's cooled down after use. If you pull this glass lid directly onto that after you've been cooking with it and not allowed it to cool, there's a danger of shattering the lid with the heat. Above the hob we have an extractor, just lights, and then your fan switch is there. Obviously space is taken up by the cowling and the ducting for the extraction unit in that cupboard. Next to that we have the fridge, freezer. So freezer top, and then your fridge at the bottom. Just one note-worthy thing while I'm here is whenever you're not using the fridge, if you're leaving it in storage and laying it up, you know, for the winter or for any length of time really, just leave the door slightly ajar. This little lever here allows you to do so, and it lets the fridge breathe, and then you don't get any bad smells from stagnant air in the fridge. The way the fridge works is that it's a three-way fridge, so it'll run on mains electric, gas, or 12 volt. Mains electric is perfectly efficient and will keep the fridge cold and get the fridge cold. You switch it on by a long press on that button there, and then you can manually select the power source that you require. So mains electric, as I said, perfectly efficient. The next one along is 12 volts. Now that will only work when the engine is running. It uses the 12 volt alternator supply from the engine. It's not very efficient. It will only keep the fridge cool while you're traveling, so you need to get it cold first and then switch to 12 volt. Next one along is gas. Again, perfectly efficient, and can be self-sufficient on that without the need for a mains hookup. Or you can select an auto mode. So when that A is selected there, that will automatically select the most relevant power source, and the first one it's jumped to straight away is electric. We're hooked up to mains electric now, so it's going to use the most efficient power source. So if I were to remove the mains electric from outside, then it would try and find gas, the next one along, and then if it can't find gas, then it obviously defaults to 12 volt for transit cooling. This is your temperature control, so on a really hot day you want the fridge to work harder. On a ice cold day, then there's no point the fridge working overtime, it'll just ice up. So select the most relevant power output for the ambient temperature, and then to switch the fridge off, it's a long press on that button there. There are instruction manuals for all these individual appliances in the book pack, but it's fairly straightforward. Up here we have this model has been fitted with the Wi-Fi system. It's probably better to explain that on the day that you collect, but basically it's like a little mobile phone. There's a SIM card that goes into the back of this device here, and you can log onto that with your devices, and that gives you Wi-Fi. There's a television aerial there with a booster. You just adjust that dial for the amount of amplification you want. And this model's also been fitted with a net box for the Truma heating, so you can actually adjust the heating from externally, you know, via mobile phone. But should you not require that, then the controls for the heating are just here. This is the Truma system. So to switch this on, it's a long press on the wheel that's on the inside there. I'll just switch it off, and then we'll fire it up as though we're using it for the first time. Okay, so a long press switches it off, and a long press on this wheel here also switches it on. Okay, so the first symbol that we come to on here is the temperature of the motorhome. So select that by pressing the wheel, and then you turn the dial and select the temperature that you require. So 22 degrees, room temperature, that's what I would recommend you start off with. I'm going to switch it off just for now. To come out of any of the menus, then you press this back button here. The next one along, as we scroll through with the wheel, is the water temperature. Okay, so you've got Eco, which equates to 40 degrees. Hot, which is the equivalent of around 60 degrees. Boost, what that will do is take all the power from the heating of the motorhome and allocate it to the heating of the water. So if you've got it in boost mode, you won't get any heating in the motorhome. So I would recommend just probably leave it on hot, mix it with cold water, and then you've got a lot of warm water. switch that off for now. Next one along is the selection of your power source. So if you go into this menu, you can have gas only, a mix of 1 kilowatt electric and gas, a mix of 2 kilowatt electric and gas, electric only on 1 kilowatt, and electric only on 2 kilowatts. So no matter what you've selected temperature wise or water temperature, that is going to select what fuel is used to heat the water or the motorhome itself. You can select the fan to run just on vent mode. Okay, so that'll just vent ambient temperature air around the motorhome. The next one along is so you can set your timer. So you can set it to come on at a certain time, off at a certain time. That selects your time, so sets your time with the clocks just changing. And there's a settings menu there. Should you need to go into the settings menu, I would recommend you probably refer to the manufacturer's handbook, which is in with the book pack. But they're the main controls that you will need to get the heating and hot water operational. We've got a television bracket above that. To slide that out, you press that little lever there, slide this out, and then this section here is moved around by lifting that nozzle up. Just tricky with one hand. So you lift that little nozzle up, and then you can swivel that around with your TV mounted onto there. There's an aerial cable just in there, but you may find that you'll need the relevant one to your television, because this has got the that type of fitting rather than a male-female type. The bed is operated up and down via this switch here. It will go back up with bedding on it, but don't put really thick pillows, because as you're trying to close this up with really thick bedding and pillows on, it will blow the fuse because it's feeling too much resistance. There is a little bit of room once it's all the way up to the top, you can see there, for thin bedding. In this area here of the lounge, the hot water boiler is housed here. So this is like the near side rear corner of the motorhome here. So that's where I showed you where that vent was for the boiler. Underneath here, that's where the boiler is. I'll take these cushions off because I need to show you some workings on the boiler. Okay, so with the cushions removed, lift up this flap, and that reveals the boiler. This boiler, as I said, when you first put water into the motorhome, this is what you're going to end up filling up when you open up your hot tap. So this is going to end up a vessel of water. The most important part draining down the motorhome is the boiler. If water's left in here and it freezes, will seriously damage the boiler, and that's expensive. The drain for the boiler is just here. So in order to close this valve, you can probably just see there's like a blue diamond plastic shape on the top. That needs to be in that position. There's also a little blue button on the front at the bottom. In fact, there isn't on this model. So all you need to do on this one is close so that's in the closed position, meaning that this boiler now will retain its water. If you want to drain it, then you simply open the valve like that. So in order to get the boiler operational, it must look like that. Otherwise, all the water will just pump through the valve and onto the floor underneath the motorhome. In fact, there is a little blue button on this. It's down at the bottom there. It's very hard to see with the camera, but there's a little blue button on the front there, just where I'm pointing, and that needs to be pushed in order for the valve to be fully closed. The reason for that is it's inside this valve there's a thermostat, a temperature sensor. So what it'll do is it's a safety precaution. If it senses that the temperature is dropping to 60 degrees or below, it will automatically drop all the water out of the boiler. Similarly, if the battery becomes so low that it can't operate the boiler, it will drop the water out of there as well. It will never drop the water if the boiler is switched on and therefore operational, because it knows that you want to keep the hot water inside. So while the control panel is switched on for the boiler, it won't switch off. Okay, so that's the cushions back on there. So that's where the boiler is housed. There's a table that goes into here with a leg. and that's housed just in this wardrobe area here. So the leg's just in the corner, and this is the table that sits on top of that. You can see how the leg goes into that disc there, and the leg sits onto this here. So the washroom, so the toilet, to use the toilet basically, obviously lift the lid, open this valve up here, and that basically opens up the valve that we showed on the cassette toilet itself. So that allows you to use the toilet. So open up this valve here, use the toilet, press the flush button which is here, and then close the valve back up. Important that you do that, for particularly when you're in transit. You don't want the contents of the toilet swashing around while you're travelling. And there is a light that will illuminate here or somewhere on this control panel to tell you that the cassette is full. You'll actually be able to see the level of the cassette, because the blue liquid that you use to break down all the chemical, the chemical that you use to break down all the toilet waste, you can see it, you know, as it's being used. Shower, there's nothing really to say here other than I would travel with the shower head like that, otherwise it can come out of its housing there, fall off and crack the plastic shower tray. Whenever you're draining down the motorhome, as shown on the outside, with the tap and the boiler drain, open up all the taps that are inside. So that one, and also your kitchen tap. What that does is it lets air in as the water is pouring out of the bottom of the motorhome. So you need to open up all your taps on the inside, open up the drain valve for the boiler, which we've just talked about, and also the external drain valve for the freshwater tank, which is outside. We're just waiting for that handle to come for that. The bed, which is over the dinette area, is operated via this button here, very similar to the rear one. Again, same principle applies. Don't put that back up with extremely thick bedding on it. I think that actually concludes the main controls for this motorhome. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you've got on the day that you collect, or indeed in the interim between now and the collection date. I think I've covered all the main points there, so we'll be happy to answer any questions on the day, and we'll look forward to seeing you when you collect your new motorhome.